No, you're not reading the title wrong. Our nerdy sermon today is actually, unironically, totally about Puzzmo, the puzzle webfront. Today's Puzzmo. Now, this is a bit of a weird one, but it's incredibly important, especially for a place that exists like Checkpoint Church. I've long been a proponent of the importance of the capital C Church having a whole lot to learn from community organizers on the internet. And Puzzmo is absolutely what I mean when I say that. So, I'm sure this wasn't on your bingo card for a sermon in 2024, but I hope you won't click away and will hear me out. What can a puzzle website possibly have to do with the very origin of the Christian church? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Checkpoint Church, where nerds, geeks, and gamers come together to talk about faith, games, and I just don't trust you if you're good at Spell Tower. You scare me. I'm your nerd pastor, Nate. If you like these weekly deep dives, be sure to sub, hit that bell, and find out when our next one drops. Folks, as always, we're gonna be starting with our scripture before we get into the meat about what Puzzmo is. So we'll be reading from the Epistle of Hebrews, chapter 10, verses 23 through 27. As always, we'll be reading from the NRSV UE. That's our preferred translation. Is what's gonna be up on the screen. If you have a translation you prefer, feel free to use that one as well. Let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who has promised is faithful. Let us consider how to provoke one another to love and good deeds, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. For if we willfully persist in sin after having received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a fearful prospect of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries. Let's start with the obvious here. What the heck is Puzzmo? If you know, then you definitely know. But if you don't, maybe you're like, what in the world is old nerd Pastor Nate up to with this one? Puzzmo is a browser-based application designed and developed by a team of puzzle enthusiasts led by the renowned indie dev Zach Gage and designer Orda Thoreau. I hope that's how you pronounce that last name. We can put it on the screen for anybody that wants to tell me I'm wrong. I first discovered Puzzmo when I was listening to the Eggplant podcast, where the team behind it was on an episode, although Zach, to be fair, is on many of the episodes as one of the core crew of that podcast. In the episode, I was fascinated by their concept of the blending of physical and digital media. Originally, when you would browse to the site, you'd be locked out of accessing it until you solved an introductory puzzle. Once you solved that puzzle, you'd put in your home address, and then you'd be snail mailed a puzzle that contains your key to access the full site. It felt like this elite kind of club to be in. When I first started, I solved the puzzle and discovered they'd actually done away with the snail mail option, instead emailing a puzzle with my key instead. But it did require another puzzle to solve. A bit of a letdown, but still like this weird spy espionage-like thing. It was super fun. Listening to the full vision of the team and following their manifesto on their website, this is a passion project that is attempting to de-muddy the waters of mass gaming and recreate the feeling of the back page of the newspaper, which who even gets those anymore, right? And that's exactly their point. They wanted to create a sort of set-apart space where puzzlers could come together and have a daily page of puzzles to solve in a community of similarly passionate people.
There must be so many, little old lady church groups who they're all talking to each other through their Words with Friends games. Why can't they all be in one place?
More than just games for the sake of games, though, this was a space built specifically for that purpose. They also, from the outset, didn't want there to be this elitism, but they did want challenge. And so they would build in tough puzzles and a leaderboard to inspire competition amongst the people, but they also would meticulously test the games to ensure that they taught the player as the game went on. You could theoretically be able to notice improvements in yourself through the inherent unchanging fairness of the games themselves. Of course, the obvious puzzle that does this the best is the classic crossword. It's filled to the brim with clues, and the more you play, the more familiar you get with the type of hints. But even then, you learn to go through on the first run and only answer the ones you know. This helps fill in other letters and the hints you didn't know, so you can learn and fill out others as you go along. Most importantly for my topic in this nerdy sermon is the team's focus on play literally being a holy thing. Okay, so they don't put it that way, but they also didn't go to seminary. The interpretation of play for this team is one that insists upon not being a waste of time, a waste of space, but instead is an engaging and all-encompassing feeling of complex yet free focus. Even more importantly, play isn't just set apart to be played by oneself, although that would be holy if it is set apart at all, but it's more than that. Play is a connecting point between humanity. Play is inhabiting one's own humanity and comprehension in a way that allows immediate connection with other human beings. Play is as human as breathing, and breathing is what makes us alive, and living is the universal shared facet of humanity. See, for something to be holy, It means that it must be set apart, set aside for something greater, set aside as an honoring to God. Now, I'm not so bold as to assume any sort of religious belief of gamers universally. I certainly don't think that the argument made by the Puzzmo team is that play is a Christian act of being holy. But nonetheless, it is very much mysteriously holy in a totally different kind of way. The truth is that this team stumbled upon exactly what makes our community of Checkpoint tick so well. We exist the way that we do because gamers have tapped into a divine truth that the church has forgotten somewhere along the way. We've gotten so caught up in the money-driven capitalist style of living in the rat race of life that we've lost what made church so unique to begin with. We've stopped living a holy life together. Without further leading of the witness, let's dive into the scripture and parse this one out. Our passage today comes from Hebrews, which is an epistle or letter written very obviously to those of a Jewish background. With a heavy focus on Old Testament writings and Judaic law, the purpose of this text is to draw a vivid connection between the Jewish tradition's evolution into following Jesus. This chapter in particular is a call to faith rather than a call to the rigid law that held up the Jewish tradition of old. This faith must be thoroughly tied with the sacrifice of Jesus that has made clean the slate and broken the shackles of sin. But just because a new covenant exists doesn't mean that it isn't exactly that. It's a covenant. By our knowledge of the sacrifice of Christ, we aren't to lose focus of the purpose of the rules that we upheld in the Old Testament. It's just a new covenant. We're still covenanting together. Instead of the rule-heavy covenant that we once had, we're entering into a new covenant with those rules in a slate-wiped clean place. The author begins with a call to stay strong in that confession of hope, which is a hope in Jesus. We should be faithful because Jesus was and is faithful. In the words of the liturgist, Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. Jesus was, is, and will be faithful, so we too should be faithful. By that faith, the author continues, we should provoke one another to love and good deeds, not neglecting to meet together, but instead meeting to encourage one another. Now, what's all that about? Well, first off, whoever stopped meeting is clearly being called out. And yeah, we see what you did, Todd. Come back to church. By our renewed covenant, we shouldn't see the call to faith to be a one and done scenario, but instead we should continue gathering together. Why? As a means of encouragement, provoking one another to love and good deeds. Now, why do we need encouragement? I mean, come on, folks. I shouldn't have to deliver a reality check here, but life is hard. Times are tough. It's really easy to get behind the wheel of a car, have someone slam on brakes in front of you, take a super slow turn, or not go at a green light. Anyway, it's easy to see that kind of stuff and lose your cool and backslide into a place of unhealthy habits. And so we continue meeting together as a reminder that we aren't alone in this world and are instead a part of a greater community of love and goodness that we can ideally call the church. The author continues, if we persist in sin after having the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a fearful prospect of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries. Okay, we got pretty dark at the end there. What's all that about? Now, it's helpful to remind ourselves of our definition of sin. Sin is a separation from God. So if we think that Jesus' sacrifice covered the bill and now we can do whatever we want, then we're living a life that will separate us from God. And if we are separated from God, then we are surely living in a place of sin and we will be judged justly for that. Where do we see that judgment in the New Testament? Christ dividing the sheep and the goats in Matthew by how they did what? By how they served the poor, the sick, the needy. And what is it to serve those people groups? It's a good deed. It's love. And so why should we be in community? To beckon one another to those good deeds and love. So we can't lose touch with community because we need the encouragement to do that which Christ has called us to. And what did Christ call that life? Holy, set apart, different from the status quo, striving for something further beyond. So back to Puzzmo. What exactly are they calling us toward? Towards a set-apart style of gaming that gets back to the roots of play and encourages, downright insists upon, playing in community. Even if you're a solo player, you're still gonna see the leaderboard. You'll see your percentage, you'll see your growth. It's not social media, but it is unquestionably social. And maybe that's where the church is still missing the mark. Maybe that's why I love Discord so much. Social media isn't the salve that will heal the divide of culture. Instead, it might be the act of being social and a part of a community that is there for the sake of being set apart together. So with all this in mind, what does it mean for us today? Like I said, this kind of is the whole thing of Checkpoint Church. We are doing this every single day on our Discord. At our best, we are connecting people together in holy, set-apart community by the games that we play, the stories that we read, and the shows that we watch. But we aren't doing that for the sake of conversation. We're doing it to retain the call placed upon us by Christ, to love one another and to love God and to seek ways to do good. We are unapologetically a church. We know that not everyone that joins us is a Christian. We don't expect that on day one, but we've never once pulled the wool over someone's eyes and just called ourselves a community. We understand that the church is called to be set apart, and agree with us or not, we believe from the depths of our soul that the act of play is holy. And so we're leaning into that holy act as a means to be made better and to hold each other in a space of encouragement. If you're in the community of Checkpoint Church, that is the standard that we hold you to. It's in our rules. Do good, do no harm, strive to grow. That is how we call each other into good deeds, love, and encouragement. Discord is how we maintain meeting together to do that. 24/7, I might add. If you're not in Checkpoint Church and you're intrigued by this concept, then know that that is what this is. That's what we're doing here. We're doing the hard work of living into the call placed upon the church. We've had countless people tell us that we aren't the church, but I dare say we're living into the Hebrews 10 call to church better than I've ever experienced personally as a pastor. And we'd love to welcome you into that with us. So, whether you're a crossworder, a type shifter, or somehow good at really bad chess, know that you're always welcome here at Checkpoint Church. Folks, thank you so much for watching this one. I so appreciate you taking time out of your busy week to join us on these nerdy deep dives. If you want more of what we have to offer here at Checkpoint Church, we are streaming on Twitch every Sunday, Tuesday, and Friday, except not every Sunday, because tonight we're actually having DLC with our special guests talking to us about racial equity in gaming. I'm super excited for that. Join us tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Discord. We'd love to have you. Speaking of the Discord, in order to go to that event, you'll need to be on there. Discord is our 24/7 community where we're always hanging out and building relationships with one another and building one another up. We're calling each other to good deeds and love. I'll link both of those down below. Also, we do have Bible study curriculum available for this. So if you're already a part of a church or a small group or a young adult group or whatever might be in your circle and you want to talk about these sermons in community, we've prepared some questions, some activities, some prayers, some ideas, a full curriculum based off of every single one of our nerdy sermons as they come out. So be sure to go to jesuslovesnerds.com. Again, I'll link that down below as well. Folks, if you watched this far, odds are you liked this one. Thanks so much for watching. Click that thumbs up button. Let me know this is one that you particularly enjoyed. Here's some others to watch like this one. I know this is kind of weird, so what else really is like Puzzmo? We did have the one on Harvest Moon where I don't really talk about the game as much as I talk about like the game around the game, if that makes sense. So you could go watch that one, or you can go watch Bochy the Rock, just because I love Bochy the Rock, and also because it does talk about the gift of being in community of people that are different than you. It might be a good like part 2 to this one on Puzzmo. Or you go watch The Midnight Club. That's a throwback where we talk about the stories that we tell to one another and what each person brings in the story and in the background that they have for themselves. Quick question for you. What is your favorite Puzzmo puzzle? If you don't know, maybe join our Puzzmo League. I'll drop it down as well in the description. We do have a Puzzmo League that we get together and we get higher scores based off of who gets the highest score for each day. So it's a ton of fun. I'd invite you to be there. If you want to know my answer to the question, I'll drop it down in the comments down below. Folks, with that, we're going to end this one as we always do with our 3 things that we believe to be true about every single one of you out there. Whether you believe in God, don't believe in God, go to church, don't go to church, hate God, hate church, we still believe these 3 things to be true about every single one of you out there. Number 1, that God loves you, like really, really loves you. Number 2, we love you. We want community with you. That's what we're doing here. Number 3, that you, yes, you matter. You are a person of sacred worth. The world is a better place. Why? Because you are in it. Folks, with that, until the next time that I see you, whether it be on our Twitch channel this week, whether it be on our Discord right now, or whether it be same time, same place for another nerdy sermon next Sunday, I look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye! Cool. I love this. I'm so into this. I love the gameplay style. This music slaps. This room just is what it is. There is a thought, but I want to figure it out myself. Okay, we're going to try that. Ready? Here we go. Boom. Before it goes, I was too slow. Man, you gotta be fast. Or that just isn't the answer. Wait, this must not be the answer. There's no way, right? Wait, no, I'm in the bottom. Yes, that was the right answer. I knew it. Nice. It is a miserable state of affairs.